You're live.
Thanks so much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Noel Pfeffer with the city's Community Development Administration, and we're here today on August 7th, 2024 at 1520 Market Street for another meeting of our Community Advisory Committee. On the agenda today, we'll start with a debrief from the open house that we held a few weeks ago, soliciting input on our consolidated plan, which sets the city's federal funding priorities. And then we'll move on from there to a presentation from the Reinvestment Fund, sharing an update and additional details regarding their market value analysis process, before moving on to another presentation from LISC, the consultant responsible for drafting our consolidated plan, who will share an update as well. We'll then conclude with a discussion of future community engagement initiatives, including upcoming open houses and focus groups. And so with that, I want to toss it to the group for anyone who has a debrief or a reflection to share on the open house that we held at Wool, to share it with the group. And unfortunately, we will have to come to the mic here as unfortunately discussion held at the table will be inaudible for the live stream. I'll share from my perspective that it was well attended. I'm very grateful for everyone's contribution to pulling it together on our staff, on the advisory committee, with our partners at LISC and the Reinvestment Fund, for having really interactive stations where folks could join to share their funding priorities, share what type of affordable housing they want to see developed in the city of St. Louis, identify parts of the city that are assets, that are challenges, that are changing rapidly. We got a lot of really wonderful input, and as a result, we are planning on holding additional open houses to continue the dialogue with the community. And we'll have a little bit more to say about that later in the agenda, but our next one is on August 22nd, 2024 at 12th and Park, starting at 6 p.m. That's the 12th and Park Recreation Center. And so with that, I want to open it up to anyone who has any reflections on either the open house or what we've heard from the community thus far, from the open house, from surveys, and what we are interested in, any questions that we're left with, conclusions that we think we can draw, or future plans for further engagement.
I believe the event went overwhelmingly positive. As Noel said, there was really high turnout, and so it seemed overwhelmingly positive. People seemed really excited to be there, interested in learning a lot of programs. And I think it was also really beneficial to have it in the middle of a residential area. I think that brought out a slice of the city that might not come to an event downtown.
Just big shout out to LISC for really quick turnaround, putting these interactive games, activities, engagement activities, and stickers together. So people really enjoyed the room. And for the record, because I'm taking notes on this, I did a very informal walk around and just asked people, how'd you find out about this CDA newsletter? We're so close to 2,000 subscribers, but everyone said CDA newsletter. So if you're not forwarding that to people that might be interested, hit that forward button and subscribe at the CDA's homepage, city website /CDA. Okay, Thanks.
Thanks, Tommy. Before we move on, I'll just note a few takeaways that I have from looking at the data and the priorities. And one is that everything seems to be a priority. I think that presents both an opportunity and a challenge. The opportunity is that clearly the demand for these services and this work is great. The challenge is that the scale of the need dramatically exceeds the available resources. And so we have, and that's the nature of our planning process. Is it is a prioritization plan process, but that's going to be the challenge. I'll share that one impact that the feedback we received has already had on our funding opportunities is that one item that the public added to funding priorities that we did not have as an option, but we did invite folks to share additional ideas, was drug and substance abuse treatment programs. And reflecting this, it received an overwhelming amount of support, which I think speaks to the extraordinary need for these services. We decided to make these services a high funding priority for our current RFP. And that's the last thing I'll note is that CDA did release our CDBG request for proposals on Friday, and that'll be open through September 6th. And that is the best place to apply for funds for the calendar year 2025 for public services, for economic development, for public facilities and improvement. Another new program that we added and funding opportunity that we added again in response to public feedback is a facade improvement program. And so we encourage folks to apply for those resources as well. So we really appreciate the feedback. It really does affect our funding priorities and how we move forward. And this funding cycle is going to be an essential element of our 2025 action plan, which is itself a core element of our 2025 to 2029 consolidated plan. So with that, I want to toss it over to our partners with the Reinvestment Fund to share an update regarding the market value analysis. Thank you all so much. I know you were in town in the past month, going around the city block by block, looking at our residential market, and really excited to hear a little bit about what you're finding. And I'm sure our committee will have questions. So thank you.
Thanks so much. My name is Michelle Schmidt, and I'm here with my colleague Marcy Monaco-Vavrick. And we will be sharing with you some information that we've created since the last time that we were here in St. Louis, when my colleague Ira Goldstein, who's unable to join us this evening, was presented and was at the open house. And we found that open house was really very helpful for us as well, as it did guide our navigation and driving through the city. So let me just share my screen. And get this. All right. How's that working? Can everyone in the room see the screen that I'm sharing? Great. Great. So just to back up a little, just a reminder of who we are and why we're here. So my name is Michelle Schmidt, and I am here from Reinvestment Fund. We're a nonprofit bank or a financial institution with a public purpose. And we primarily are lenders in the areas of affordable housing, healthy food, civic institutions, any type of component that would really add to what it makes to make a neighborhood that everyone would want to live in. And so we are based in Philadelphia, but also have an office in Atlanta. But we work nationally across the country. We've worked with St. Louis since 2012 on the market value analysis. So we're excited to be back here for our third time doing this work with you all. Marcy, Ira, and I work for the Policy Solutions Department of Reinvestment Fund. And we really specialize in doing spatial and statistical analysis, working in partnership with government, with nonprofits, with foundations, anyone who has a limited amount of resources that they really want to be able to deploy as best as possible, and then also to really understand what the impact of those investments are. And we tend to work in the same fields that we lend in, so affordable housing, fair housing, early childhood education, healthy food, commercial corridors. Again, any of those components that really make a place where a family could thrive, people can thrive. And as Noel said, we were in town in July, and we were able to participate in the open house, which was very helpful. And then we spent the next 2 days, Ira and I drove around St. Louis, and what we did was took all of the data that we were able to get from CDA, so information about sales, information about permitting activity, demolitions, vacancy. We take all of that individual level data, and then we drive around the city and take a look to see how the data that we have on our maps in our car comports with what we see out of our windshield. And so this is the route that we took over those last 2 days, those 2 days that we were there in July. And you can see we covered a fair amount of the city. We'll return at least one more time to continue to make sure that the data analysis that we're doing comports with what we're seeing across the city. And as I mentioned, this is the third time that we are doing the market value analysis in St. Louis. That first time was 2012. We returned in 2019. And I was fortunate enough to be a part of that work. And now we've returned in 2024. And we were able to really take a look at information in these three buckets. So we look at property value and investment, we look at distress and vacancy, and we look at measures of housing characteristics that are neither positive or negative, but just add to the, tell us more about what type of a neighborhood we're working with. And you can see we were able to use most of the same data from last time to this time. And so that way we're able to create a snapshot that this time around that is pretty close to what the same information that we were looking at last time. Just a couple of changes in terms of permits and residential land area. And so we thought today for this evening, we would just go over a few of the maps, a few of the kind of most striking changes that we've seen since our last time that we were here in 2019 and now. And so I'm just going to walk you through a few maps that demonstrate those changes that we've seen. So throughout, when I go through this next kind of series of maps, the maps on the left-hand side of your screen are going to show that 2017-19 data, so that older data from when we were here last time. And the map on the right-hand side is going to show the more up-to-date data. And so what we're looking at here is a map of the number of sales that have happened during those two time periods. And what we'll see on the left is you can see in that purple, those are areas where there were no sales. So you can see the big difference here is that on the left-hand side in the 2017-19 period, there was very, very few residential sales all through that downtown area and midtown. So all of that purple. And now when we look on the right-hand side, we see that we just really don't have that many places where there aren't that many sales. There's just that one tiny purple section just north of 44 on the far eastern edge of the city. The other thing that really jumps out is that there's the volume of sales in the central west end has really increased since last time we were here. That's also true in the west end. So we're seeing more sales where last time most of North St. Louis, there was very, very little transaction that were happening. And so we see that has changed this time. And now we're going to take a look at vacant buildings. So when we were here last time in 2019, on the left-hand side, you'll see that most of North St. Louis just had this very high level of vacancy. So most of those block groups on the left are in those highest categories where there's 15% of the residential buildings were vacant in that darkest color. What we saw this time around on the right-hand side is that we definitely noticed a lot of vacancy. So the vacancy is still quite high, and there are still those pockets where are in that highest category of 15% or higher. But we did see, but the data are showing that there are fewer vacant buildings this time around, and we attribute that to all the large amount of demolitions that have happened since last time we were here. So just a lot of those buildings are just no longer exist. And that's kind of reinforced by this map of vacant residential land area. So on the left-hand side, you can see again that same pattern of higher shares of residential vacant land in North St. Louis. But if you look on the right-hand side, we see that that there are more places in that highest category, and that highest category is very high. So it's at least half of the residential land is vacant. So that's a very high level of vacancy, and we see that in many pockets along in North St. Louis this time around. So we are attributing that to that demolition of the vacant buildings that we had seen in the previous slides. I also wanted to take a look at the residential permit activity. So we see the share of residential permits was very high on the left-hand side last time we were here, particularly in Tower Grove South and in Soulard. And we still see that those are the areas where we're seeing, and Central West End, and we're seeing that there's still that level but that we're still seeing that permitting activity happening, but we're not seeing it as widespread as we were last time around. And I think that is all that I have for now. I'm happy to answer any questions or if anything jumps out. Impressions, any kind of feedback would be great.
I do have a question on the permits. Is there any way to know if it was done by an owner or an investor? You know, if they were flipping the property or if they filed for their own home?
That's a great question. And I believe that I'm thinking, so we can look and see if a sale was to an investor. And so I think we could get a pretty good guess on that. I think we would miss some because if the investor had purchased the home, prior to 2020, then we might not have that data. But I think that's a great indicator, and I think that we can take a closer look and see what we can get from the data that we have.
Yeah, because it could be two sales, but really it was an investor and then a homeowner. Yeah. So the increasing of the list, the numbers in sales could be a little skewed
from those flips. Yeah. And we've done some of that work. Sometimes we'll take a look and see if there's been an intervening permit pulled between two sales. So that's the kind of, we can take a look and see if we see that kind of a pattern as well. I'm just making a note to take a look at that. Thank you. That's a great suggestion. Great. If there aren't any questions, then I'm happy to pass it over to our friends at LISC if Chris is up. And I will stop sharing.
Thank you, Michelle.
My question
Sure.
is, now you are the guys who do the reinvestment. I I don't, do you have any data on where you are investing in St. Louis City or where you have your partnerships?
So we have so for reinvestment fund, I am not sure what our activity is, our lending activity is in St. Louis. We do have information about what the city of St. Louis has with investments that the city has made, and we are going to add that to future maps that we are taking a look at to see what that pattern looks like and where those places have been.
But it
So
also
that's
would be
something that we can
helpful if
certainly.
you guys also, with the city of St. Louis, put what your investment that you guys are doing as well.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Let me make
Oh,
sure.
okay. Hello, my name is Karen Greer. My question is kind of like a spinoff of Mr. Russell's. In regards to the location that you're investing in, the St. Louis City has a lot of investments in certain neighborhoods where we're still dealing with historical disenfranchised neighborhoods that are hot pockets or black holes of these developments that are around these developments that they keep pumping the same money into. How can we assure the residents and business owners that we are giving the fair share of equity in these neighborhoods that are historically disinvested in?
So I think that might be, I mean, I think you're exactly right that that pattern of disinvestment is why we are seeing that type of these patterns that are that we see now, that's directly related. And I think in terms of understanding the guaranteeing the equity of it, what we're able to do is take a look at what is going on in neighborhoods across St. Louis. We're able to look and see where those investments that exist are getting made are, and we can look and see how those things line up, right? So to be able to see if those investments are going into places where the need is greatest. And then I will defer to Noel to be able to answer how the city kind of takes care of that and make sure that that work is happening.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle, and thank you so much for the question, Karen. That is the heart of the city's economic justice action plan, is how we reverse decades of disinvestment, in particular in North St. Louis. We know that decades of neglect, of redlining, of restrictive covenants, of quote unquote urban renewal policies that have demolished predominantly Black neighborhoods, of white flight, Team 4 segregation, have all hollowed out North St. Louis. And so we're committed to bringing the same level of intentionality to reversing those effects. We know that the city can only grow, can only thrive if we heal those scars, and that the city can't grow while half of it is left behind. Now, in terms of how we do that, there's the question that I think this work is focused on, and where the data that the market value analysis and the reinvestment fund is bringing to bear will be invaluable. And one thing that we've requested from the reinvestment fund as a next step is a really detailed breakdown of the building permits in terms of where they're located geographically, whether they're owners or developers, what are those patterns of development, what is subsidized, what is market driven? Because one of the challenges that we see is that, unfortunately, due to all the historical factors that we've just discussed, most of North St. Louis and parts of South St. Louis and Southeast St. Louis as well do not have a market that can bear the costs of development, especially not with the extraordinary costs of construction, of labor, of insurance, of materials. And so we're in a place where the city is really needing to take the lead and be the first mover in terms of creating markets, making markets, and going block by block. And if we go back, actually, if Michelle, you could share your presentation again and actually go to the city permits section. I think that there's a really interesting parcel that jumped out at me when I saw this map, and that I want to share with you all as well. And it's that parcel just south of Fairgrounds Park. Do you see it there on the right-hand side? Just south of Fairgrounds Park, you see a parcel with more than, or sorry, a census tract with more than 5% of parcels with permits over 10,000. And what that reflects is a very intentional investment by the city of over $5 million in ARPA funds towards the development of over 25 new affordable housing units, including a combination of for sale and rental housing in partnership with a community-driven developer, Tabernacle CDC. And what you'll see there is that those for sale homes represent the first mortgages that have been originated in those blocks in 15 years. And that's and this isn't a random census tract either. This census tract is really important strategically for the city of St. Louis because it sits at that intersection just south of Fairgrounds Park at the intersection of Grand and Natural Bridge. And that's exactly where the Brick Line Greenway has its terminus. It's also exactly where the Green Line, the North-South Metrolink, has its terminus. And so we were very intentional about investing in that geography and prioritizing it for building markets and making markets, because we think that that's a geography that has an enormous amount of growth potential. And our goal is to build the market such that in time it can sustain itself, and we don't need to be in that position of subsidizing the development so dramatically. And so I think one of the questions that we have, and we have a lot of questions, but as we think about the city's residential market, as we think about affordable housing, we're planning a series of focus groups to really help us prioritize what type of housing do we want to be building, rental, for sale, permanent supportive housing. There's a lot of different options. We want to build affordable housing as diverse as our city. But one of those questions is also, where should we build that affordable housing? There's a tension between two kind of imperatives that I think we're all intuitively drawn to, which is one, we want to spread investment around equitably and evenly around different parts of the city. And two, we know that we can only really build markets and make markets if we concentrate our investments and really focus them block by block. So I think that's something that we're very much seeking public input on as to what is the appropriate balance between those twin mandates and how we calibrate our policies for maximum transformative impact. It's about 22 for sale and then a few more rental, and there's also a LIHTC development being proposed subject to MHDC approval. And with that, I will pass it over to Lisk and Chris.
Good afternoon. I'm Chris Plummer with Local Initiative Support Corporation. Let me share my screen. Are you able to see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay. So we've been tasked with assisting the community development administration with developing the consolidated plan, and we just wanted to update you on where we were in the process. And the last time we shared data with you, we understood that there, were certain clarifications needed in some of the data. So we're gonna just recap some of the items and to provide more clarity in terms of the data. Okay, so just to give you an update of where we are in the process, we will be developing a draft of the consolidated plan over the next 2 months, working with CDA, and we've done the surveys, we've done some of the community consultations, and as Noel mentioned, that the resources are not enough to address the needs, so it calls for prioritization, and out of that prioritization, we'll develop a strategic plan for public comment. What's in process now is that we're continuing the community consultation, and the agency consultation mainly focus now on some of the on the agencies and institutions, city departments that were required to get input from. We're doing another survey, but this time for agencies. We'll be doing some interviews, both related to the con plan as well as to the analysis of impediments to fair housing choice, the AI. So based on the assessments, the findings, and we work with the CDA staff to develop priorities and spending proposal for the 5-year period, and also for the first year, the annual action plan first year. We're also working on the updates to the AI, which is required by HUD to look at housing discrimination, the rules and regulations that impact housing, and enforcement, and identify impediments out of that will also guide the allocation of dollars and the strategies that the city will use in terms of spending the federal funding over the next 5 years. The housing market analysis data will be incorporated into the consolidated plan. And these are the main components of the consolidated plan and first year annual action plan. Just wanted to highlight those. Wanted to also give you, I don't know that we gave you this the last time, just some additional information from the surveys. To date, as of today, we have received 392 surveys, but we had to only 344 of those were within the city limits, and we didn't force questions, so respondents were allowed to skip questions. On the profile sections, about 16 respondents skipped the question. So what you have here is the breakdown of the profile based on that number. You see the age range, 76 persons within that group, with 26% were below 34 years old. Your 65 plus response rate was 18%, with 58 persons at that age group responding. The racial breakdown was predominantly Caucasian, 67%, and African Americans, 26%. We had about a 4% Hispanic ethnicity response rate. And household sizes, interestingly, were the number of households with 3 members or less was about 280 of the respondents, 85%, and 4+ members was 48. Main household types were single person, 2 parents, couples. And then some of the key takeaways we wanted to recap was that the community needs were ranked, even though almost everything was considered of highest importance. But in terms of a final breakdown, what we noted that in terms of ranking, affordable housing and redevelopment of vacant properties were, number 1 and number 2. And, public improvements, public services, economic development were also given priority, but lower priority. And the consolidated plan, when you set your priorities and goals, you have the flexibility that during the 5 years, in 1 year, you might focus more attention on some activities, in especially activities that are not the high priority activities for funding. You can include those as a part of your annual action plan, but it gives you that flexibility. Again, we're looking at the types of affordable housing. We're going to have the focus groups that will look more, take a deeper dive in terms of what types of housing. We noticed that energy efficiency and rent-to-own housing was also included as preference. And then these were some of the other activities that were higher priority: stabilizing vacant lots, code enforcement, and for economic development, workforce development, and small business assistance were ranked in the highest economic development category. And these were just some of the data. And we shared with CDA the full download. So if you're interested as committee members to look at some more details in that, that's available to you. These were for community revitalization and code enforcement priorities, and then economic development priorities. All right, and then the health centers, neighborhood cleanup activities were actually selected as high priorities, along with street improvements and sidewalks and water, sewer. In terms of public services, most of those were high needs in most of those category. We expected that about 99% skipped the question. And the highest need scores, as you can see by the number of responses, was in the areas of mental health for adults and children, homeless prevention, substance abuse, as was pointed out in terms of what was added to some of the priorities: childcare, youth services. Again, it doesn't mean that you are bound to those activities, and with your RFP out, that will also help you to determine how funding will be allocated. And these are just the charts for that. So in terms of the housing market, we saw increase in median home value increase in median rent, the number of renter households and homeowner households that are cost burden, meaning that they're paying more than 30% of their income on housing costs, and severe cost burden spending more than 50% of income. You had a high number of households in the lowest income ranges. And some of the data showed LMI households and poverty is concentrated in the north and northeast area. A question we also asked is to folks what were some of the housing factors that most impacted them, and that was really the increased cost of housing, property taxes, security deposit, and also the increase in absentee landlords were items cited as most impactful for. So the other takeaways from the analysis of impediments related to fair housing complaint, there was a decrease from 2018 to 2013 in terms of fair housing complaints. We've not identified from 2018 to 19 in 2022, with the biggest drop between 21 and 23. And we're going to be having conversations with the fair housing agencies regarding some additional input in terms of what we saw related to those numbers. Some of this might, in some ways, might be due to COVID, but we will get some more additional information on that. What we found interesting was the question about how prevalent is illegal discrimination. Of the persons who responded, 61 or 25% felt that it was significant. Another 60 felt it was moderate. And then 49% felt it was minimal or none. And not sure or other was at 29%. 105 persons skipped the question. Some of the other comments really included comments around gentrification, the city being more vigilant in terms of safety issues in the community, and addressing absentee landlords. Only when we asked a question about if you thought you had been denied housing based on being a member of the protected classes, only 24 or 10% of the survey respondents reported being denied housing based on the protected class, and 105 persons skipped the question. In terms of what they felt were the perpetrators of that discrimination, of the 24 that said that they were denied housing, 10% attributed to landlords, 10 responses attributed it to landlords, 6 reported mortgage lender. It was interesting that 320 respondents skipped that question. In terms of the basis of discrimination, of the 24, race and familial status were the highest reasons they felt for discrimination. In terms of reporting discrimination, of the 24 responses, only 5 reported. Of those, only 2 stated where and the result, what happened as a result of the reporting, and 3 preferred not to answer the question. We kind of added another question that related to, the no reporting, why they didn't report, so they did answer questions, 19 respondents that did not report. Their reason for not reporting, that they didn't think it was going to make a difference. They included not knowing where to go, having fear of retaliation, or it was too much trouble to pursue that. We also looked at people's housing situation in terms of tenure of the respondents. The main type of tenure was ownership, homeowner 170 with 75% and 18% for renters. Others included group homes, or people didn't give an answer. In terms of the how long persons were in that particular housing situation, 118 were in their situation 6 years or more, and with 81 or 36% were in their housing situation for 10 years or more. And then in terms of what are some barriers to affordable housing, there were 209 response, of which 172, 82% of them answered that they had no barriers, and this was to, decent, affordable housing. They answered no, or it wasn't applicable to them. And what some of the responses is suggesting is the need for more education and awareness of housing discrimination. What does it look like? So we'll have, as we mentioned, have a deeper discussion with the fair housing agencies to get some more insight into that, which will drive the fair housing action plan that will be developed as a part of the of this process. That's all I had. There any questions?
Hey, Chris, it's Dr. Rose. I have a few questions. So I know that we spoke, and there's a slight difference in the information that was presented from last month. My first question is, when you went from the key survey takeaways to the housing market to the analysis of impediments, is this still from the survey data? Because you have, there's some assumptions in fair housing complaints, and how was that? How did you get that from the survey? Or where did that information come from?
The fair housing complaints came from the case records through the state and regional fair housing agencies. That wasn't a part of the survey. Sorry.
Okay. Can you cite that and then send that back to us so that we can have that information? And then for the housing market information, some of this information is that's cited is from 2022 and 2020. Is there any updated information as far as the market now?
That is included in that MA and NA sections. So I will
okay.
If you can note I will update that section and send to you.
Okay. And then if you can you give the advisory committee, do you all have any questions before I ask this question? Any updates on I know when we met with Ethan, he gave us showed us some really cool maps and things like that the last time that we met. And I was hoping for an update to that part of the consolidated plan.
Well, I think the maps that he provided you with was an example of what's required in the um, the various sections of the plan. There are updated maps on that. I think those are the ones that are online. So I'll need to check with him. But all of that, some of those maps that he shared with you were in the needs assessment sections and the housing market analysis sections that are in the box folder. Yeah.
Right, but that was supposed to be part of the presentation for today. That's what I'm saying. When we spoke
Well,
earlier, we discussed the advisory committee seeing some of that so they can know where we are in the process.
Yeah, the ones that were in that internal document that we shared with you were just really examples. So I'll check with Ethan in terms of providing that for the next or include it, revise it and send it to you.
Okay.
Yeah, because those were just samples. They weren't, and I wasn't in a position to speak to that data today. Any questions? Well, let me add, could I ask here too, in terms of some of the fair housing data, was there anything that surprised you? Anything that you, as members of the community, want to add to that? What we're seeing in the data.
I think without the updated information, we can't ask, I mean, for me, I can't ask the appropriate questions without legitimate facts that we need that should have been supported today. The last meeting that we had last month, we were supposed to have been supplied that information so we can make a well-informed decision or question. So, I mean, I think that's kind of like where we're stuck at. We're stuck from the last meeting with the same information.
Okay.
So, I mean, I guess, better inform us, I mean, to give us some information that was just like an analysis or something like that, that we can't get anywhere with that.
Okay. Yeah, I think, well, thanks for your input. I believe the request required us to probably give you some more details on what the survey results were. But I'll circle back with that information.
One of the questions that was just asked at the table, Chris, is the time frame for providing that updated data. Is that something that you all could present at the next meeting of the advisory committee?
I believe so, but I'll check in with Ethan, who is the team lead. But at this point, I know they have a lot of the data. He had shared with you the access to the folder and so on. So I believe they should be able to do that at the next meeting. Yeah.
Exactly. We know you all have done a lot of work and we have hundreds of pages worth of material, but a synthesized presentation summarizing some of that work is what I think the committee is looking for.
Okay, got it.
All right, we're going to move on now to a discussion of upcoming engagement. Thank you, Chris, and all. a question. I would really like to have this conversation at the table, if possible, instead of all cycling up to the microphone. Tom, is there a way we can make that happen? Do we have members? All right. In the public session, we are not going into a closed session. All right. I don't know if folks could hear Tom there, but with the presentations concluded, we're going to adjourn this public meeting and continue some discussions about engagement here at 1520. Any member of the public that wishes to join us in person is welcome to do so. But just for logistical purposes, we're going to continue. We're going to end the virtual element of this meeting. Any comments from any attendees joining us virtually or members of the public? We really appreciate you all joining. And if anyone has strong objections, we can also explore alternatives. But and we'll also all right, wonderful. It sounds like we have no other virtual attendees. So
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.